Listeners, we talk a lot about scaling in business, like scaling in revenue, systems, scaling impact. But have you ever thought, what about scaling our consciousness? How do we lead not just from the head, but from the heart, and still thrive in a world that measures success in numbers, not nervous systems? Today, on this episode of the Cosmic Confluence podcast with your host Sana, we are diving deep into that intersection between conscious leadership and business transformation. Listeners, my guest today is someone who has lived both the structure of academia and the surrender of spiritual awakening. After years as a vice president of inclusive excellence and graduate professor, he hit a wall, a burnout so deep it stripped away everything that wasn't real. A 24-day water fast changed everything for him. From that stillness came ConsciRise, a community built on authenticity, healing, and integrity. So, we are going to explore how tools like mindfulness, hypnosis, and sound healing aren't just woo, they are strategic levers for clarity, creativity, and decision making in business. So, let's all break open the myth that being conscious means being soft and find out what real strength in leadership actually feels like. So, listeners, meet my esteemed guest, Dr. Jonathan Locust. So, Dr. Jonathan, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's really such a pleasure to be here. And again, thank you for all the work that you're doing to basically be able to share the information and just be an instrument to be able to help elevate the consciousness. So just thank you to what you're doing as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jonathan. That really, really means a lot. And let's begin first. Unraveling the journey that you have had. I mean, you have seen both the worlds. You have lived in both the worlds, the corporate academic system, and then the holistic healing space. So I'm very, very sure. I'm very confident this conversation is definitely going to be very interesting and maybe eye opening for every one of us. So what do you think corporate leadership still gets wrong about consciousness and transformation?
Yeah, so I would say one of the things that they get wrong from the beginning,
Mhm.
depending on which type of leadership you're dealing with, is it's not associated into the process at all. And I think that is a thing that can really be um it can really be a disservice to the leader, the people who are within the organization, because everyone, and this is kind of what I believe, that everyone is here to consciously grow. We have experiences that help us grow. And the leaders can, kind of being a point to where as they're leading, take that into account and take that beyond the just revenue outcomes or the quantitative outcomes that
Mm.
the the organizations say are the goals of the quarter or of the year, but to also think about it in terms of, oh, yeah, we're doing work here. There's work that we have to do, but then how can we then take into account the ways in which people are progressing along with our leadership, which just leads to a more efficient organization that is more conscious based.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense, because it is not about replacing performance metrics or the reports or the goals with, just mindfulness talk. But I think it's rather integrating the human element into the metrics, and I think that's a tough bridge to build, because I think the awareness and the acknowledgement is yet to be done there. And if you can, maybe share some of your experience, where you actually have seen both the sides, like, let's say a particular group, or maybe a board member, or anyone who was completely into the world of, metrics and this business, but then once it kind of became integrated with the consciousness and the human element, everything kind of, changed for them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I would say like kind of as an example, and I would say just for definitions, right? Because a lot of times we just had a conversation with in one of our communities about there not necessarily even been an official definition for consciousness, right? Because there's different perspectives of what people kind of feel it means like and things like that, but there's not kind of really an official definition. So kind of as a person who's my PhD is in research, so kind of taking these concepts and then
Mm.
breaking them down into what I would call operational definitions. And then operational definitions allows us to be able to measure for something. So if I'm looking at, okay, what are the outcomes of culture that has increased consciousness? I will see that as a culture that also has increased learning. I mean, and not only increased learning, but increased resilience. And resilience is actually a metric that you can come up with a measure for. I would think it is a community that has a greater sense of connection. Not only a connection with the group, so there's a feeling of cohesion amongst the group, but also that feeling of cohesion extends into the community. So I think there's certainly different metrics that we can start to be able to come through that really starts to be able to make it make sense so we can actually see how those levers actually have an impact on the KPIs. And to give you an example, I would say the one of the best examples would be myself.
Yeah.
Is being able to get to the point to where not only was in my role, was overseeing not only a number of students, but I also ran a lot of in our systems. There were 30 and for the state of Minnesota, there were 35 colleges and universities. So I had state work that oversaw like all of those institutions. So when you're traveling and doing a lot of work and you talk about seriously being burnt out, the thing that got me over the edge was I had a health issue, and it was the health issue for me that really kind of got me to the point was that with this health issue, if it wasn't corrected, I wouldn't be able to do certain things. We wouldn't have a certain life that we had planned, all of these different things that I wanted. And that happened when I went outside, when I went to traditional medicine. And traditional medicine told me I would have to be on medicine for the rest of my life. I wouldn't be able to heal myself. So, along with being burnt out and with being unhealthy, you start to realize that there is no other way but for me to have a different perspective if I want to actually progress. And for me, as I started to then realize other ways that cultures achieve higher levels of consciousness, how they heal themselves, I learned more about fasting. I learned more about meditation. And that led me to a 24-day water fast, to where
Mm.
I meditated and was able to really get to the reason behind my health condition. Because what I learned during that experience is everything that we go through is based on us learning. And if we can actually learn the lesson behind the experience, then that experience doesn't no longer need to be there. So to be able to understand what is the lesson that needs to be learned. And during my health experience, I learned that lesson during an intense fast and during meditation. I forgave some people who did some things to me when I was a child. I forgave myself for things I did to people with that mindset, and once I retested, I completely healed myself. And that was kind of the course of action when I start really looking at things from a conscious and well-being perspective. When you see people who are maybe they have great sales numbers, but when you see how they're doing, their health isn't good, or they're on a lot of medications because they're depressed. That's not
True.
that's not all around healthy organization. So being able to kind of tie those two in.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect way to answer that, because yes, Dr. Jonathan, you are here the living example, the living embodiment of how transformational it can be. And I think one very important, very pertinent thing, or a takeaway for every one of us, especially for listeners who are maybe in the leadership position or they are looking forward to. Um, I think it first starts with us inside out. How we look at ourselves, not just from a one aspect, but holistically. You went on this transformational journey, which kind of, um, helped you to do self introspection, work on your health, think from a very different perspective. And I think, especially for high achievers, or people who are in a very stressful job, maybe they could be performing very well, but inside out, they're feeling that hollowness, that emptiness. It can be a tough pill to swallow, to give themselves that compassion, that forgiveness, that rest, that pause, because they would think that, everything will go out of my control. And I think that is something, it is a messy middle kind of, but I think, with small steps, with help and guidance, it is possible.
Absolutely, it's possible, and it's really one of those things that, you know, loneliness, um, is a real feeling, and those feelings and emotions that we go through are real. And for me, it's those ways in which we can utilize things that are going on in our lives that we may not have been utilizing before. So, like a lot of it, I've talked well, I haven't talked about it yet, but I've underwent hypnosis and had a past life regression and a life between life session, and which has been life changing. But one of the things that one doesn't have to necessarily go through that. If one just kind of wanted to start to understand, okay, I'm feeling lonely. Well, then you may be having dreams that you're not paying attention to, which I do Jungian dream analysis, Jungian 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 dream analysis, which is a conversation between your unconscious self and your conscious self. So there's certainly ways in which we can start to kind of feel and integrate those parts of ourselves that maybe feel disconnected, or those feelings of kind of outbursts of anger, or those things that we just feel that are not in balance. Well, ways in which you can find balance, kind of, I feel like, in a very low key, low cost way, is just really conversing with yourself, and understanding what your unconscious self is trying to tell you. Because if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling sad, or like all these different feelings and emotions, your unconscious self is trying to communicate with you. And to be able to then find a way, understand what those symbols are within your dreams. And again, that's way active imagination is another one. Grounding your way to the grounding yourself to the earth as a visualization. But to be able to find what I think are balances in the moment, because these emotions become real in real time. So how do I find a balancing act, something I can use immediately in the moment? I can ground myself in the moment. I can send love and light to people in the moment. So these are things that I think really become important as we start to figure out how one starts to come on this path and start to incorporate these things, kind of regardless of how you're feeling, and a way to be able to start to see some immediate growth.
Wow, that is fascinating. Especially, you mentioned about dreams, and um, personally, have always, I have always have these questions about dreams. Like, um, you see different symbols. It could be like a mountain or a snow mountain, or maybe sometimes it's like a flood. It can be fire. It can be sometimes animals as well. It can be, we see kind of those images of our loved ones in our dreams. um and then we wake up and we try to think about, okay, what exactly did I see? That is fascinating, Dr. Jonathan. And do you think that, and you mentioned about the Jungian part. So is it directly related to the Jungian archetypes that we often hear, or we often hear in the discussions around our identity?
100%. You are 100% correct. And for me, it becomes a way for us to be able to do what I would call like inner work. And I use that, and inner work is the name of the book. So I'm using the actual terminology from Robert Johnson, which is kind of talks about a way we can start to use these processes. But yeah, absolutely. And so for one who I'll kind of just kind of share a process that a 3-step process that is mentioned in the book that I use, and it's a way to really get started. So this part is not mentioned, but a person who does dream analysis told me this. So one of the things that is helpful is to drink water before you go to bed, because if you drink water before you go to bed and you're dreaming, then you'll have to wake up and use the restroom. But that also gives you an opportunity to write down, or I just record a voice note of my dream, and then that way you have the remembrance, because sometimes we may have multiple dreams in one night, and those dreams may be communicating a succession of things that are happening in our lives. So to be able, that's kind of been a technique. Another thing too is if you're having problems memorizing your dreams in the morning. Well, one of the things that became really helpful for me is give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. Ask yourself to remember your dreams. Ask yourself, say, I want to consciously remember my dreams. I give myself permission to remember me in your dreams. And believe it or not, you will start to remember your dreams. And one of the things as far as process, they go through a 4-step process. The process is association, dynamics, interpretations, and what they call rituals. And associations is pretty much writing down all the persons, objects, situations, color, sound, or speech that come through the dreams. And what you want to write down is, what feeling do I have about this image? What words or ideas come to mind when I look at it? What am I going through today, and how does this correlate to my personal life? So then you'll kind of go through, write all of this stuff out, and then you'll go through each one, which they call the click it method, which as you go through, you'll kind of figure out and see which one that kind of clicks. And the second thing is dynamics, when you connect each dream image to a specific dynamic in our inner lives. And that's when you identify the part of our inner self that appears as the image of the dream. So, what part of me is that in my dream? Where have I seen this function in my life, and so forth? The third one is then when you're writing down your interpretation, what is the central message this dream is trying to communicate to me? What is it advising me to do? What is the overall meaning for the dream? And how does it correlate into my life? And then that fourth step, which they call is ritual. And it's actually taking the message from the unconscious, you're writing it down, it's becoming physical, and to have some type of act or message to the unconscious self that the dream is has resonated. So that may be whatever comes to you within that dream, to be able to honor that dream. That could be something as simple as, and it has to be something that correlates to that dream. So it's going to be unique for each one. But doing something, maybe it's a walk, maybe some way to commune with nature, but there's a number of different ways that, or maybe it's actually physically going somewhere. There's a space in their dream, because our dreams show up in places. So maybe actually going into that place and just recognizing that, and then that then starts to then not only to solidify the communications and symbols between the conscious and the unconscious, but there's a melding between the two, and that melding leads to a higher level of unification, which then is leading to a higher level of consciousness.
Wow. Wow, that actually makes a lot of sense, Dr. Jonathan. I haven't had. I mean, I will really admit that I haven't had the the opportunity to write down my dreams, but I feel, uh, just describing, or maybe just putting down the memories and penning them down, maybe in my journal, it can really, really help in seeking those answers, to sometimes what I think consciously.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that, and even journaling, journaling is a great way because, once and the thing is, you have to do something physical, right? These
Mm,
things just cannot be in your mind. You have to do something physical to solidify what's happening. So writing it down on paper, these acts, it does really supply, and it builds on the connection. So even one of the things, I'll even kind of give I'll even give an example of how these things replicate. Like I did a hypnosis, and I understand this is the third life of which I know of here. I've been indigenous Native American Indian in one, and second I was a corn farmer, a white corn farmer. I'm black now.
mm,
If you can't see me, I'm black. I'm African American. But one of the things that I learned in the previous life was loneliness. I didn't have any family. I didn't have any friends. I had a extremely, extremely lonely life. And
mm,
one of the things, and I'm a very outgoing person. I like to talk. I like to meet people. So that was a very, very, and I mean, during that session, I cried multiple times because it was just such a lonely life. But one of the things that happened, two things that I'll mention is when I had my first girlfriend in that previous life. While I had my first girlfriend, one of the things that I did not learn was how to find solace and peace without that relationship. But I also realized during that experience that that woman in my previous life was actually a ex in this current life.
well,
And I was able to find peace and move on from that relationship, but these things are connected. The second thing I would say is I didn't realize, and I realized this when I went to the what they will call like spirit world, which is a very, very kind of peaceful place that we go upon death. And I was able to realize that even though I didn't have any kind of like physical relationships, I did not see the opportunity to have a closer relationship with nature in that life. I was so focused on the relationship, not having a relationship with other people. So one of the things that I make sure I do now, we planted trees in our backyard, and even when I'm running, I'm consciously breathing out CO2 for the trees, and just to be able to make sure that I'm balancing the energies from not having and communing with nature in that previous life and doing that now, but being able to show these rituals, doing these things in the physical, what I feel loosens or thins the veil, and it thins the veil between our conscious self and our unconscious self. And when those two are integrated, I think this also gives us more access to our brain. There's more neurons that go off. So I also think, now this is why I can't necessarily like prove that part. I don't want to. But a lot of it is as you think about consciousness. What is consciousness? And how do you define it? So, but I just share those things as ways in which examples of how we can not only go about balancing, but if we continue to progress and know ourselves, whether in dreams or whether it's meditation or whether it's connecting to the earth, doing something that is physical, that act of balance will really start to unify the parts of ourselves that may feel disconnected.
mm, yeah. No, I personally, I really, really agree with that because, Yeah, we not sometimes we use that phrase, and this is a bit from the business side, but sometimes we would use the phrase that it feels like I have met you before. It feels like I know you. It really, we connect really very well. Our frequency really match. um it's like that, we have met the soul in our previous life. It could be, they could be in a different, with a different appearance or maybe identity, but it's the souls, who are interacting with each other.
Yeah, I agree, and not only that, and I believe like these relationships that we have are not only geared upon different lessons, but these relationships will continue on with us in our lives. And just to kind of make it to kind of go into, I'll say business real quick. There's a few different things that I'll say. One is if you look at, and this is not only happening in the U.S. but even internationally. I think it may be a little different in places like India, since you all are already just, I will feel like just more kind of high, a lot more highly spiritual than like the U.S. But even in the U.S. right now, there's an organization called Pew Research which track this, and
Mhm.
people are becoming less religious and identifying more with spirituality. And that's a trend that is happening and increasing. So even from a business perspective, to even think about kind of who your customer is and who the demographics are, that's a fact of what's happening, that your customer may not be operating under the same religious overtones that they have in the past. They're going to be from a more spiritual perspective. So understanding what that means from a business perspective is one. The people, the customers changing. And the second thing that I will say is, if you're a business person, you know how to set goals, you know how to progress, you know how to set action steps. So just think about, if we have this things that we're doing in our life, and we know a lot of times we feel like we have a greater purpose. A lot of times we hit our purpose. Then I think our what is happening here just mirrors kind of what happens in, I will call it, the spiritual world. And consciously we do progress. And I will say one of the ways that I would think about it is very, very simply for our business folks, is if you're familiar with the chakras and the energy centers. Some of you may not be, but if you are, they follow the colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And they also align with certain places within our body. And when you look at what is color, and color really becomes like an analog of electron rotation speed at different frequencies, right? So we know that if they're rotating at different speeds, then that's going to emit a different color. And I believe that becomes an allegory of how we consciously progress. So when we think about, well, what does that mean, and where are we now? Well, I would say that, well, first density, if we're looking at how we progress, first density correlating to, let's say, red, or color red ray energy center, would be like the elements: fire, water, earth, and air, and spirit. Then you go up to orange, the color orange ray, or second, right? The second color. And then that will correlate to intelligent animals and intelligent plants, because we do know there aren't that mycelium communicate. We know that there's been research that trees communicate underground. So we know these beings are consciously alive. Then we look up to third density, or yellow, the color yellow. That looks at kind of where we are consciously, and where we look at where our goal is to essentially like make a choice, and to make a choice where we're going to essentially be of help to other people, service to others, or service to self. And then the fourth, we think about what is the fourth green, and I won't go through kind of all the colors because I want to be cognizant of time. But what I will say, as this go up, we consciously progress, and what that means is we have greater and greater access to, I would say, the information fields that are around us. And when I say information fields, what I mean by that is, if you look at, we talked about Carl Jung, Jung, and one of the things that they talk about was the collective consciousness, and the collective consciousness of us sharing a collective mind. And when you look at certain things and experiments, of even people being able to telepathically communicate. Universities have been studying this, and people are being able to do that more and more now. So when we look at like what does it mean to consciously grow for all our business people out there, which I'm one of them, I believe that not only are we growing in business, but we're growing consciously. And there's stages that we're growing at. And the more we send love and light and do things to be of service to other people, then we're going to go more in that direction, which is going to just continue to add more positive energy to those around us. And we're going to be impacted by that. And those around us will be too.
That's very well explained, Dr. Jonathan. Very well. And I know, I mean, for the fact that 30 minutes is not a justified time because this is such a vast field, vast aspect of our life to explore. And that is why I think the core message or takeaway for all of us would be continuous learning. Because until we do not have that clarity, that hunger for learning first ourselves, and then then how many things are there to explore, I think we'll always try to brush everything off as either woo woo or just as skepticism. So Dr. Jonathan, before we wrap up, when you created ConsciRise, you mentioned it was born partly out of being exploited during a vulnerable period. um, how did that experience change your understanding of authentic leadership, especially in spaces that claim to be conscious, but they aren't always ethical?
Yeah, that's a great question. And and that was really it for me was when I was going through my health issue, and when we a lot of times go through issues, we're very vulnerable. And that's when we're open to new things. We're vulnerable and we're open to new things, which depending on who you're dealing with, can people try to take advantage of that. And that's what happened with me. When I was dealing with the health issue, I met with people who were not service to others oriented. And
Mm.
I went on to think about like, wow, how wrong is it to try to scam somebody when they at one of their lowest points? But I was just curious of has that went on to happen to other people, have the people tried to be scammed? And I went on that just in the United States alone, and there's no mechanism that is really tracking this. So this is me just putting together different lawsuits and things like that. But just on documented paper in regards to lawsuits, there's been over 8 million people scammed out of over $1 billion in the US alone. In these running these types of services. So one of the things that we do for all of our practitioners, we have a 5-step vetting process where they're interviewed twice. They do background checks. We certify and verify all of their credentials, all of their degrees, to make sure they are who they say they are. And one of the things too, I would say that really makes us unique is a lot of times, when you're trying to work with people, there may be times where they're just trying to just hurry up and get money out of you. And that's one of the things that we don't do, which is why we have a free community. And we have in that community we have events that we have where our practitioners are speaking at. So you get to see who they are in real time, and no one's asking you for money. Now you have to pay for a service, of course, but the community is free. And that's one of the things where we really where which really has drove ConsciRise was to really be that source of trustworthiness when it comes to practitioners and conscious and spiritual growth, for business leaders, for educators, so they know that we're taking this seriously. And you don't have to worry about anybody trying to scam you. Is what we care about most is how can we help you achieve your goals? And if you may say, okay, I don't really know what my goals are. Well, we can help you figure that out, because some of the things that I mentioned about dream analysis, about active imagination, about meditation, about visualizations, one of those things that we talk about and say is going to resonate with you. And we got something for everybody. And one of the things that's even cool, like what I love about the platform is we got some of our Indian brothers and sisters on the platform. We got a gentleman on there, his family has been practicing Vedic astrology for the last 5 centuries. And his family also does finance astrology. My brother Prajwal. We have something for everybody. We care about all different cultures, and we want to be that symbol of trustworthiness for conscious and spiritual growth.
That is, I think that is one of the most important thing to look for right now, because I also see, I mean, unfortunately, few people who would be exploiting or seeking power from the vulnerabilities and helplessness of people who may look at them as, this life changer or this ultimate power that only this particular person will be able to change my life. But I think someone who is genuinely there to guide you, mentor you, help you, will be there to show you the path or maybe give you the information and direction. But then it is totally up to you who will be walking down that path.
100%, 100%, and that's one of the things that, and I'm so happy you said that because one of the things that we when we're talking to people, we ask them
Mm.
kind of how they look at healing. And for if they answer anything about they're the person who's doing the healing, then they're never going to be on our platform. They have to understand that they're only a conduit for the healing. They're not actually the one, it's the person. We're providing whether the information like you said, or whether it's a way of being able to receive certain content or a certain crew, whatever it is, it's the information and the things that's being provided or energy work, but we're only the conduit. And if there's anybody who has perspective that's other than that, they will never be on ConsciRise.
Exactly, exactly. And I think before we wrap up, listeners, I think this hits deep because there's so much marketing around integrity in healing spaces, but very little real accountability. So definitely feels like that we are rewriting what ethical leadership means in this new paradigm. So, Dr. Jonathan, if listeners they would like to connect with you, explore more about ConsciRise, what would be the best medium?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things you could do is you can go to conscirise.com, ConsciRise.com. And you please join one of our communities. You can follow us at ConsciRise on Instagram, find us on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and you can follow me at LOCUSTJR, J Locust Jr. on Instagram. And if you put in Jonathan Locust, Dr. Jonathan Locust, I'll come up on LinkedIn and things like that. So we will welcome. We'll love to be able to have you. We'll love to learn from you, and hopefully provide a space where you can learn from us and we can grow together. And even use, I would love to be able to not only be able to do this again, but even look at how we can create a community together for even for your listeners who may want a space where they're maybe want to know more about conscious growth in business. I would love to even see how we work on something like that. So this has been phenomenal, and that's how your listeners can continue to contact me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jonathan. And listeners, I'll make sure to have all the links and details in the show notes to connect with Dr. Jonathan or be a part of this his community. And I think what I am taking away, and I hope that you all listeners are taking away from this convo, is conscious leadership isn't soft. It is rigorous. It is choosing radical responsibility over autopilot, coherence over chaos. And it is asking, how do I scale impact without shrinking my integrity? So, thank you so much, Dr. Jonathan, for being the light here, the shining light, the guiding light. It was really helpful and very insightful.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for, again, all that you do. Like I mentioned at the beginning, for your phenomenal questions, and the space that you make for people to increase their consciousness. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That really means a lot, Dr. Jonathan. And listeners, as you head back into your week, maybe try this micro practice. And it's totally up to you. Like maybe one decision made from presence, not panic. One meeting opened with a pause, not a pitch. Or one KPI that measures well being alongside wins. Because small shifts compound, and that's how cultures change. So, thanks for writing us with On Cosmic Confluence. Lead with heart, execute with clarity, and please remember consciousness isn't a finish line. See you next time. Thank you.